Okay, hello and welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Network webinar series. Today we are joined with Karyn Ross and Professor Peter Hines. So today Karyn will be giving an executive overview on the PDCA as a creative process and not just a scientific approach. So this is going to be quite an interactive workshop, which is really exciting and a bit different. Just a couple of words about us. So the Enterprise Excellence Network is for senior lean leaders, founded by Peter Hines, and includes quarterly benchmarking events and case studies from award-winning host sites. And currently we're doing all of this virtually. But you will find out details on how to find out more about us in the follow-up email, which will be sent after this webinar. Just a few logistical things. So for this webinar, it's useful if you can enlarge Karyn's her screen where her picture is so that you can see her whiteboard. So Karyn will go through the workshop with you, and then there will be time at the end for some Q&A. Okay, so I'll just hand over to Peter, who's just going to say a few more words about Karyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, and good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is with you. Nice to see you all again, or at least know that you're out there. So at this session, we're going to run a little bit differently from our usual session. So instead of doing a talk and just doing a Q&A, Karyn is going to run really a workshop with us, which should be quite fun. And Karyn and I suppose we got in touch because we both sort of were questioning the whole sort of lean scientific management that, in fact, I attended and I was one of the speakers at a workshop with the Shingo Institute on scientific management. And all the speakers were talking about PDCA and Deming and all these sort of things, which was all great. But I sort of thought to myself, well, what about the people? What about, you know, the emotions? What about the engagement? What about the creative side of all this type of thing? And then I came across Karyn, who did all this stuff. So I thought that was fantastic. So I thought we'd invite Karyn along to share her thoughts on a much more sort of artistic bent towards the sort of lean space. And the other thing she wanted me to mention is, although she's based in America, she's Canadian. That's quite important, I think. So anyway, I'll hand over to you, Karyn.
Thank you so much. All right, welcome everybody. And if you haven't met me before, I will say that I'm coming to you from just near Chicago, Illinois in the United States, though I'm originally from Canada. And I don't come to the world of lean from the world of business or the world of science. I actually come to the world of lean from the world of art. So I have a master's degree in sculpture. And for me, PDCA is actually the creative process. So to make a sculpture or a piece of artwork or actually a new and better way to work, all is about PDCA and about creativity. Oftentimes we think about lean as a set of principles, practices, and tools to help us solve already known problems, and we might not think of it as something that's very creative. But to start us off, I really wanted to take us back to the basics of lean and Toyota Way and take a look at Sakichi Toyota's 5 precepts. And you can find this on Toyota's website under their global mission and vision. And this is really the basis upon which everything that we know about lean sits. And so precept number 1 is always be faithful to your duties, thereby contributing to the overall good. So I want us to remember that actually Kaizen and all of the work that we do has to contribute not just to making things better for the people who do the work, and even actually the company, but for the overall good, the good of the world. And precept number 2 is always be studious. And hey, look, there's that word creative, striving to stay ahead of the times. So although we tend to maybe think about lean as the way to solve already known problems, the truth is right here is that idea about creating the new ways, and in fact, the new ways that are going to contribute to the overall good. 3rd precept, always be practical and avoid frivolity. well, do you think that I think that Sakichi Toyota meant we should never have fun? Actually, I don't think that at all. I think in this case, what Sakichi Toyota meant in this precept is that ideas that we have, unless we turn them into a practical reality, how are we going to take those creative ideas and contribute to the overall good? We shouldn't leave ideas in our head. We should use them practically, turn them into a reality, see what happens, and see how they can contribute and make things better. Fourth is always strive to build a home-like atmosphere that's warm and friendly. So here's the basis of our respect for people, right? And fifth, always have respect for spiritual matters and remember to be grateful at all times. And thinking about just in the context of coronavirus and all the difficulties that so many have been through and that you may be going through, sometimes it's hard to be grateful. But think about what Taiichi Ono said, a problem is a buried treasure. So when we have difficult times, we should use those times to think about how we can create better ways for us to be able to do the work, for us to be able to help people and contribute to the overall good. So how do we do that, and how does creativity have to do with it? So, and as you can see, I'm the very low tech person, so I'm going to flip my whiteboard and readjust over here, and I'd like you to think for a moment about yourself. Would you consider yourself a creative person? If you are, raise your hand either regularly or electronically. And one of the things I'm going to say, because this is a question that I ask when I'm speaking to people all the time, and I'm sad to say that if I'm standing up on stage and doing a keynote and I'm looking out at the audience and there's 250 people in the audience, maybe 5 people have their hand raised or 10 people have their hand raised. And it makes me really sad. And the reason it makes me sad is that as human beings, we are innately creative. It is part of our humanity. We don't have to go to art school. We don't have to study. We don't have to do any of that. As human beings, we all come with creativity. And if you're not sure about that, I'd like you to think back to when you were a child, or if you have children, you can think back to that too. And maybe you did something that the management didn't totally agree with. Maybe you drew on the walls. Maybe you came up with an interesting use for something. The simple fact is, as children, we are creative. We have all kinds of ideas. We try all different kinds of things, much to the distress of our parents and other adults. But somehow as we get older, we think that creativity has something to do with artists, and that if I'm not an artist or if I don't work in the marketing department, that actually I'm not creative. And we put that label on ourselves and we go to school, and there's a variety of different reasons that happens, but that's really unfortunate, because to follow Sakichi Toyota's precepts and to contribute to the overall good, we need to have ideas. We need to think about new ways of doing things. So what happens between when we're kids and we all, I can't think of a single child that if you give them a colored crayon and a piece of paper or Play-Doh or anything like that, they're not going to have a good time with it and make something. What happens to us between now and when we become engineers and we become process improvement people? What happens to our idea of creativity? Well, I'm going to tell you, we get stuck in this loop of convergent thinking. So convergent thinking, and I'm sure you're all used to seeing this funnel. This is something we use constantly. We're used to taking a number of possible causes, funneling them all down and looking for the one root cause. So convergent, and I always make this little funnel here, means we're taking many and we're converging down to somehow one right answer. And I don't know about in the UK, but in the United States, we have a lot of standardized testing. And when children are young and they go to school, they learn how to fill in little bubbles and choose from a bunch of multiple choice answers, and there's only one right answer. And we get very used to this convergent thinking, and we actually use it a lot in Lean. And we look for problems that already occurred. We use the 5 whys, we use a fishbone, and we think about all of the different reasons, and we look for one root cause. That's all convergent thinking. Okay, so we're very, very mired in this idea of convergence. Then what happens? Well, we come up with some kind of ideas for possible countermeasures or solutions. And then this is also something that really, really informs our convergent thinking and amplifies it, is this is my least enjoyed kind of tool, which is the effort impact matrix. So we have all these ideas about possible things that we could do to fix our problem, and we decide we're going to plot them on this matrix. So we put them all on here, but actually in general, we don't know if something is going to be high impact and low effort. We don't know actually if it's going to be a high effort and low impact. We're making assumptions about that. Oftentimes the things that go up in this quadrant, the high impact, high effort, we say those are the IT things, right? And we don't really want to go and deal with the IT department because they might not be too nice. So usually we say, okay, well, we're not going to do all of these kind of ideas. We're only going to do these ones, try out these ones that are up here in this high effort, high impact, low effort box. What's the problem with that? Well, we have now discounted all of these different ideas when we actually don't even know if they really were going to be a lot of effort. We really don't know what the impact is going to be. And the reason we don't know is we cannot predict the future. We're not mind readers. There have been many times I've actually gone to the IT department and asked them, oh, we'd like to do this. Can you tell me what it would take? And they would say, oh, it'll take 5 minutes. All I need to do is put a little check mark in this box. And we, meanwhile, have discounted all of these different ideas. Now, first of all, not only is that bad because, well, one of these could have been really a fabulous idea and improved what we're doing for customers, for the people who do the work, for the organization, and for the world. But there's actually an even worse consequence. And that is over here, we forget that each of these ideas about what possibly we could try goes with a person. A person gave you that idea. And since we try few, if our idea isn't the one that's tried, guess what? We think to ourselves, no one likes my idea. It was already, I'm not creative, and it was already hard for me to give an idea. But meanwhile, now nobody likes it and they've discounted it. So I'm not going to give any more ideas. And we have now reinforced the fact that people aren't creative. We've actually reinforced the fact that people don't want to give us an idea. So we get stuck in this whole convergent thinking cycle, and we think, well, I'm not creative. That's for the people in the art department, and I don't want to give my ideas. This is extremely problematic because guess what? We need, in order to create new and better ways to work, to actually contribute to the overall good. We need ideas from all different kinds of people. We need everyone to understand that they are creative. So what we need to do is we need to practice something different, and I call that divergent thinking. So I want you to now take a moment and think again. And if you've gone to some kind of training for lean principles, practices, and tools, and learned any of these kind of things, I'd like you to raise your hand. All right, now I'd like you to think a moment. How many trainings have you gone to help you get more ideas, to help you become more creative? And while sometimes some people have, the vast majority of people that I speak to have not. And that's a huge problem, because if we don't help people have an idea and be more creative, how are they actually going to take that idea and turn it into a new and better way to work, a new product, a new service, something that's going to contribute to the overall good? So what I'm going to suggest is that we actually, in the lean world, need to spend at least as much time on this side helping people have an idea as we do on this side helping people learn a principle, practice, or tool. So how can we have more and better ideas? I'm going to explain to you some of the little bit of theory, and then, of course, because this is a mini workshop and we learn by doing, I'm going to teach you my simple, practical creativity method that you're going to be able to use. You will be certified in the method after we finish the mini workshop, and you can teach it to others. So a little bit of theory about divergent thinking. Divergent thinking, as you can see, we have our arrows in our funnel going the opposite way. We want as many ideas as possible, because if you think about most of the processes that, especially in services where I work, there's not going to be one root cause of a problem. Chances are there are going to be many contributing factors. We're going to have to deal with them all. If clients are getting incorrect insurance payments, chances are there's not only going to be one reason. There's going to be multiple people who are creating those payments. Customers are going to be using multiple softwares. Looking for one root cause is not necessarily going to help us actually deliver better service and create better ways to interact with our customers. So what we want to do is encourage as many crazy ideas as we can. And then what we want to do is we want to take all of those ideas and try them out in a simple, easy way. Because first of all, we have to admit to ourselves, we are not mind readers and we do not know how things work in reality. And we're not going to know. Instead of making an assumption, as good lean practitioners, we should try it out and go see what happens. So in an easy, simple way, low cost, no money, Taiichi Ono said, use your brains, not your money. I'm going to say, use your creativity, not your money. And here's the other wonderful thing that happens when we try all out. Look, we have a smiling person over here, because this person now is seeing that when I give an idea, we're going to try it out, right? And the person is see as their ideas, they see what happens. They're going to say, hey, I have great ideas and I'm creative. And now we've reinforced their ability to come up with ideas and their ability and their confidence in giving us ideas. So how can we do this in a super simple way? Well, I'm going to flip the whiteboard again here. Now we're going to practice my very simple way, because everyone, including you, is creative. So it's time for you to take out your paper and pencil. And what I'm going to ask you to do when you get your paper and pencil is at the top, I want you to write the word target. You can make a nice little picture of a target like I did if you want, but you don't have to. And then I'm going to put on my timer for 1 minute, and I'm going to ask you to think about something that you have really, really wanted to do, but you haven't done it for whatever reason. Maybe you wanted to play piano. Maybe you want to take painting lessons. Maybe you want to write a book, but you haven't done it. So I want you to think for a moment. I have my handy dandy, goodness knows, isn't this a wonderful thing for us all to use? My timer here, I'm putting it on for 1 minute. And I'd like you to write down what your target is. As you can see, my target here is that I'm planning to open a school in the next little while. So something you want to do, but you haven't done before, okay? And when the timer goes off, we'll go on to the next step. All right. I hope everybody wrote a target over here. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to ask you to do this step by step, because in Lean, we do not like batching, right? We like single piece flow, one thing at a time. The next thing I'd like you to do, on the left-hand side of your paper, I just simply like you to write this heading, why can't I? We all have things that we want to do, but for some reason, we don't do them. And inside our heads, we have what I call the long list of I can'ts. That's that little voice in your head that when you say, oh, I want to write a book or I want to open a school, it says, well, you can't do that. And the reason you can't do that is I want you to write down all of those reasons, because as Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So what we want to do is write down every possible reason, even if you think it sounds silly, I want you to write it down and make what I call the long list of I can'ts. And we're going to make all of those things visible, because when we see them, we can do something about them. Think about it. That's one of our Lean principles, right? Once we see it, we can do something about it. And I want you to be, when you write your long list of I can'ts, I want you to be as specific as possible. So I don't want you to write down, I don't have time. Because actually, guess what? We all have exactly the same amount of time in the day, 24 hours. You have a choice about how to use your time. So I want you to write down if you say something like, I don't have time, what's preventing you? What are you using the time for instead? Maybe you're reading books or scrolling through social media. Maybe you're taking children to school. But you have to be as specific as possible of all the reasons we can't, because if you think you can't, you can't. And we're going to have to find ways around all these I can'ts, which is where our creative thinking is going to come in. So I'm going to put the timer on for 3 minutes, and don't work on the other side of the board. Please only work on all the I can'ts. And when you think you can't write anymore, write some more. All right, so we have the timer on, and I'll come back to you in 2 minutes and 51 seconds. All right. I hope everybody was able to write as long a list of I can'ts as possible. Sometimes people say when they see the I can'ts, they see a lot of excuses, and that helps them. Sometimes they also say it's very cathartic because things spinning around in our head oftentimes seem much worse than we write them down when we write them down on paper. So as you saw, I had a target of opening a school. Now you say, why would Karyn be opening a school? Well, it's because I have a new book coming out called The Kind Leader, a practical guide to eliminating fear, creating trust, and leading with kindness. And I've decided that I'm going to open actually a school called the New School for Kind Leaders. So this is something that I'm working on, and I've never opened a school before. So I'm figuring out how to do it. And here's some of the reasons that I think that I can't open a school. Well, I don't know what's required by law here in the United States. I think it's overwhelming. My family might think I'm a little bit crazy. I'm almost 60. I'm too old to start a school. How will people register? Who will give classes? I don't know how to do a website for a school. I don't have money to pay for teachers. All of these I can'ts are things that I'm going to have to create ways to overcome. And the way I'm going to create those ways is through creativity. If you take a look at the bottom here, I'm going to tell you my 3 elements of creativity. And the first is divergent thinking. As many crazy ideas as possible, right? As many. It doesn't matter how crazy they sound. Think about what you could do. Think about how going to the moon must have sounded crazy to people 200 years ago. Actually, think how crazy it must have been to people 10 years ago that we can chat on video chat. We don't even have to think about that anymore. All of those things which seem crazy at one point actually are reality. So much of the things that were science fiction when I was growing up, we take them for granted now. Oh, how about this, right? Exactly. So first is let your imagination go wild. The second is we have to get rid of that convergent thinking, remember? And you can hear that when people say either or. Let's do either this or that. Now we're eliminating 50% of the ideas. That's convergent thinking. When that happens, I want you to substitute and. Instead of saying, let's do this or either this or that, really simply say, let's try this and that. And the third is synthesis. How do we put different, seemingly unrelated ideas together to make something new? And again, the example is this fabulous device, which I'm sure all of you have. I can't actually live without this. And when you think about it, although it seems new, it's not. It's a telephone. Alexander Graham Bell invented telephone technology in the 1890s. I have 26,000 photos stored on this and in the cloud. Photography technology was around in the 1840s. I got my first computer in 1982, and this is a small handheld computer. Oh, it's also a lot of things: a calendar, a stopwatch, a clock, all a whole bunch of disparate things combined into something that we think is new. And was this made by artists? No. All different kinds of people. By divergent thinking and putting synthesis, instead of taking things apart as we love to do in Lean, putting them together. So what I'd like you to do now to practice the next part of the process is on the other side of your paper, write, how could I? Or how could we? And then what I want you to do, because remember, we like single piece flow. I want you to choose one of your I can'ts, circle it, put an arrow over here, and then I want you to spend 3 minutes using your divergent thinking and not either or in synthesis, of all the possible ways that you could overcome those I can'ts. I don't care how crazy it is, because crazy things are possible when we get together and do them. So I'm going to put the timer on for 3 minutes, and I want you to write down as many how could I's as you can. All right, timer on. We have 2 minutes and 57 seconds. I'll be back to you then. All right. I hope you wrote a long list of how could I's. Now, I'm going to tell you something that maybe you never thought of before. You don't have to be responsible for every fabulous idea of how to create something new or overcome, and I can't. Remember synthesis? The wonderful thing is we have 7 billion people here in the world who can help you. And the next part of the process, and you can do this after we finish the webinar, is to take your list of how could I's and your I can'ts and go and talk to your friends. Go talk to people who have all different kinds of perspectives and points of view than you do and say, hey, this is my target. I don't think I can because of this. Here's my ideas for how could I. What ideas do you have for me, right? And not either or. Synthesis, combining ideas, just like all the ideas are combined in this phone. So you don't have to be responsible for solving every idea. So once you have your how could I's, remember what Sakichi Toyota said. We have to try out our ideas. We have to be practical. So I'm going to flip this around again because this is where this little chart comes in. try one idea a day in a small way. Write them all down, put the date, then write what happened. And actually, if you tried one idea a day for 2 weeks, I can pretty much guarantee that you're going to overcome almost any I can't. And one thing that can make that easier, and I'm going to just move this to the side a moment, is having a coach help you. And the coach doesn't have to be a trained coach. They don't have to have a certificate. All they need to do is check in with you frequently. And I actually have a very simple coaching method. Karyn's coaching approach, 15 minutes a day, 3 times per week, 1 PDCA cycle per day. So what happens? Oh, on Monday, what idea are we going to try to overcome our I can't? On Tuesday, the person does a PDCA cycle, tries it out and sees what happens. On Wednesday, we meet again. What happened? What's the next PDCA cycle? Thursday, they do the PDCA cycle. Friday, we meet again. The wonderful thing is that actually, when you're used to having 15-minute meetings with people, it's just like, oh, we always bring our coffee. It's like being with a friend. You don't want to disappoint a friend. Often when we have coaching in Lean, we have an hour and we batch a whole bunch of things, even though we don't like batching, right? So what do we do in the session? Really simple. We say, what was your target, right? We always go back to the target in your homework. What happened? What's next? And questions. Challenge the person to overcome their I can'ts, nurture them and care for them and hold their hand while they're trying out things, because we learn by doing and confidence comes from doing. Which brings me to the very last bit of this presentation, which is to remind you to be kind. Think back to Sakichi Toyoda's 5 precepts. We need to overcome all of these I can'ts for the overall good, right? We're working for the overall good. So think about it. When we help ourselves become more creative, when we help other people become more creative, because you can take this simple system and now apply it to anything you're working on with a team at work. You can apply it to any problem or thing you want to reach at home. When we teach people to rediscover and reclaim their creativity, it's super kind, because we have so many problems in this world to solve. We have COVID, we have poverty, we have wealth inequity, we have a climate crisis. We have all of those things that need solving. And actually, the only people here on earth to solve them are us. It's going to take every bit of our creativity and every bit of our kindness. So I hope that since you are now all certified in the Karyn Ross method of PDCA for creativity and creativity for PDCA, that you will go out and you will use this. And if you have any further questions, of course, you can connect with me, but this whole approach is actually written down in this book, How to Coach for Creativity and Service Excellence. So thank you for practicing your creativity with me today.
Thank you very much, Karyn. I have my own list of things here, so I have to go away and do some work on that now and find a coach, etc. So that's great. So I'm going to throw the floor open. If there are any questions for Karyn, I'm sure she'd be more than happy to answer those. So in your right-hand side box, you see there's a question area. You can put questions in. So if there's any questions, write them down and I'll pose them to Karyn. So while you're having a think about that, I was thinking of various things as we went along there, Karyn. So the first thing that came to mind, are you familiar with the Harada Method? Is that something familiar? Yeah.
Yes. I have heard of the Harada Method.
Yeah, I felt we were going off in that direction. I'm not sure we did exactly in the end, but it's sort of this idea of trying to overcome problems that could be in your own personal life, not just in work life, etc., and creating goals and trying to overcome that, and finding a way to overcome what seemed like insurmountable barriers and so forth. So I don't know, this was like a mini Harada method, maybe.
Well, I don't know. I have never read the Harada Method. I'm going to tell you something that may surprise a lot of people. I actually read very little. So I'm working on listening to the voice of my heart. And one of the things that I find stifles people's creativity is that they spend an awful lot of time consuming other people's ideas versus actually trying out their own ideas and learning from their own experience. So I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, I made a conscious decision to spend less time consuming content and more time listening to my own voice and actually creating things based on my own experience.
I think I've probably done the opposite, so I don't know if that's good or bad. So when I was working in universities, I spent very little time reading other people's stuff, which is probably what I should have been doing. And I just went off and tried things out, and some of them worked and some of them didn't work. And now in my career, I've got sort of time to read stuff. So I'm doing some reading stuff, and I'm finding that quite useful as well, because it helps you to sort of try and think things through. You can get some inspiration from that, and then it's not necessarily what someone says, but it may spark some creativity in your own mind. So I don't know.
I think the idea is to have a good balance. And actually, after we finish this webinar, I have I have a month-long workshop that I offer called In Your Own Voice, and it actually helps people to figure out what that balance is, how to hear and listen to their own voice. And we spent a month drawing and writing, and of course reading too. It's not that nobody should ever read anything. It's not. I write books, right? But we have to figure out what the right balance is for each of us.
Yeah, exactly. Look, we have a question here from, or a comment from Robert over there in Ireland. He says, is the scientific method requirement for data the antithesis of creativity?
Actually, I don't think that at all. I think, again, as human beings, somehow we want to have this either or paradigm, right? However, we should use everything that we can use in the proper time. So if I try out an idea and I want to see what happens, a good thing is first to go and see what happens with our own two eyes. We should also look at the data, right? That's going to give us an idea. Did we get closer to our target? So as human beings, it's so hard to get rid of that either or thinking. They can help each other, right?
Yeah, I think it could be quite good. Yeah. Okay, look, we've got another question here. This one, hold on, I've just lost the question here. This question is from Tim. So Tim says, thanks so much for the insight and approach. Working in the heart of manufacturing, it can default to being tough and demanding and driven. It's all about balance, and I believe in what you're putting across. But how do you respond and show the value of nurturing and creativity when a classic manufacturing manager says, we don't have time for this fluffy stuff?
Well, I don't actually think that it's fluffy stuff, because in manufacturing, you're probably working in a fast-paced production line. You have many problems to solve quickly. So the idea is to gather ideas to solve them and then try them out. So I wouldn't think that it's fluffy. I think actually it's a way to speed up for problem solving, right?
So how, I mean, this one's for me. So how do you overcome the sort of proliferation of, I mean, like your simple school example, you highlighted one problem to overcome and you came up with 6 options, but you had like 8 problems. So you've got 50 things that you could do. How do we do all the ands?
One a day in a small way. So think about it. So here's the thing that I could do, and I did do. I don't know what is required by law. Do some internet research, right? That's a possibility. Ask, my husband's a college professor. I could call up the people who run his college.
Yeah.
He's been for 20 years. I could just ask them, and call my university that I went to, ask local schools. Just start without knowing. Give classes through Eventbrite. When we see these lists of how could we, oftentimes what happens is we realize the problem is not as insurmountable as we thought. Somehow we're making up all these I can'ts when actually you could just start. Oftentimes also we have analysis paralysis, which is going to give us our biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah.
The truth is,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
that's an either or. We don't need our biggest bang for the buck. Often what we need to do is get people unstuck, because we are going to make an assumption about what the biggest bang is for the buck. In reality, there is no way to know until we do something. We don't know. We have to admit that to ourselves.
Okay. So there's a point here from Ming, who says, thanks for the talk, very interesting perspective. I guess the challenge is still to have that rigor, trying different things, but in an organized way.
The thing is, I would work on the very first. I would simply start at the top of your list, listen to the voice of your heart, and that's why having a coach is really helpful. And if you do one thing at a time, I ask that people do something, not spend more than 15 minutes a day on this. Oh, I could do internet research for 15 minutes a day and find a ton out on what the legal requirements in the state of Illinois for having a school are. If I actually sit down and spend 15 minutes doing that, I'm going to find a ton of information. Oh, if I call a lawyer friend and ask to speak to them for 15 minutes, I'm going to find out a lot of information. Chances are, if you do one or two of these, you might not actually have to do the rest, because you'll have found the answer, right? You'll have simply, the problem will disappear. A lot of our problem is we don't do, we're stuck, right? Waiting is a waste.
Yeah, I think there's something in certainly this about engagement of people, because I go to many organizations, and a very frequent topic is, how do I engage my people in problem solving? And if the response is, well, most of your ideas we're not going to do, then that's not a good starting point, is it?
Do you want to do that? If you sit down, if you open your heart, and most people are afraid to give an idea because it could be shot down, or someone's going to roll their eyes, or someone's going to sit back in their chair, or someone's going to say, what a stupid idea that is, right? Are you going to want to give your idea or be engaged? No, you're going to want to protect yourself, right?
Yeah.
Try. What is wrong with trying someone's idea? And here's the thing, I don't believe in the word failure. And I think this really goes back to a deep principle of lean. If we try something and it works in the way we think it is going to work, we have not learned. We have simply confirmed that we understand reality as it is. If we try something and something different happens than what we expect, now we've had a success, because we have learned that the current state is not what we thought the current state was, or else guess what? What we thought would have happened would happen. So we say, oh, it didn't happen the way I thought it should happen. So we say we failed. Actually, we succeeded, because now we have the opportunity to learn to do something in a different way, to create a better way to serve our customers. So those are successes, right? That's what PDCA is for. PDCA isn't to spin the wheel once and say, haha, I know everything. Now this is the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. So question or point from Robert here. Should idea generation be mandatory for each team member?
I think we should be kind. And as the manager, if we see that our team member is struggling with idea generation, we should help them. We should go and see why. We should go and see, oh, are they afraid? If they're afraid, what organizationally should we do to eliminate that fear, right? Oh, if they actually, maybe they have ideas, but they don't want to say them. Maybe they say, well, I gave you 20 ideas in the past and you never used them, so why would I bother, right? Maybe they're disgruntled. Actually, maybe nobody ever helped them to learn to have an idea. Then, as their manager, you know what? You should help them with that too, because we all want people to be creative and critical thinkers. That's our role as leaders.
I think, you know, quite often I find that it's a confidence issue, you know, and this sort of links to what you were saying. If your ideas get knocked back, you lack confidence, or you lack confidence to put an idea forward. And you know, many of us sort of doing lean are maybe more extrovert, and we don't sort of realize that maybe half the population is introvert, and they don't just want to give a load of ideas off the spur of their head. They want to go and think about it. They want to go and talk to someone. They want to bring it tomorrow or something like that. And sometimes we can't empathize with people, so hence this whole thing doesn't work particularly well.
Right, and then think about the voice. I always say there's a difference between the voices in your head and the voice of your heart. The voices in your head tend to be the voices of other people telling you all the reasons you can't and shouldn't do what you were supposed to do. Oh, they didn't take your idea last time, so why would they take your idea this time?
Yeah.
Oh, so-and-so laughed at you, right? Those are the voices in your head. Those are your ideas.
Well,
of your
they
heart.
can be the, you know, they can be the reinforcing negatively or positively, etc. Okay, so we've got a couple more things here. Scott says, given the best ideas often come from groups, is it good to find a group with similar goals and work together to overcome obstacles, thinking personal goals rather than work related?
I do. If I'm trying to figure out how to do something like this school idea, I'll put a group of widely disparate people together, right?
Yeah.
Because they all come from different experiences and have different ideas.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's very good. Actually, the last comments, thank you for the excellent workshop. Someone has to go just now, so they said thanks and they're off, sort of thing. So yeah, that's good. Any more questions? We've just got a couple of minutes left. If there is a final one or two questions, just for Karyn. Just see if anything else comes through. I sort of towards the end, I mean, your coaching seemed to be a sort of simple kata coaching sort of style, you know, without sort of quite the complexity of some of the stuff. It's just that simple PDCA of, you know, what have you done? What have you tried? How did it go? What's the next problem? And, you know, sort of thing.
I'd like to put it that PDCA is PDCA. Kata is simply PDCA. I've done this for more than 10 years with this style because it's how it helped people. Kata is simply PDCA. It's all PDCA, right? So it's not surprising. The question is, how do you help and support people to gain confidence? Confidence only comes from doing, right? That is simply the fact. And human beings have a lot of fears. We're worried about a lot of things. Confidence, as a coach, my job is to lend my courage to a learner while they're going through, right? The person I'm coaching, because they don't have confidence. They haven't done yet. I know nothing bad is going to happen to them. They have to then do it and find it out.
Exactly. Look, we don't have more questions, so I think we've probably just about come to the end of the hour. So, Karyn, thank you very much for the workshop. I certainly enjoyed it. It was fun. It was good to think in a slightly different way than you know, the convergent thinking that perhaps most of us have got our heads or we've been taught to sort of think in that way. So thank you very much. So Emma, I'll just let you finish the workshop for us.
Yes, thanks, Peter, and thanks very much, Karyn. And thank you, everyone, for attending. You will receive an email with the follow-up webinar recording video as well, and also an electronic certificate for you as well. But yes, keep looking on our website for the upcoming webinars which we have coming up, and hope to see you all again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.